Thank you very much, Christoph, and it's really a pleasure to be here today. And as you mentioned, I represent the Council of Europe. It's an organization of 47 member states, and it was established in 1949 at the initiative, as a matter of fact, of Sir Winston Churchill. And the whole purpose of the organization was to ensure the respect for human rights, rule of law, and democracy in Europe. At the same time, the Council of Europe has developed standard setting and cooperation activities in the field of sport for over 40 years. And regarding ethics and good governance in sport, there are really three lessons I want to share with you today. First of all, it's the need to have the right laws. Since 2009, we have been working on emerging threats to sport ethics, such as match fixing, fraud and corruption in the governance of sport. This includes our Convention on Anti-Doping, which was launched already in 1989 to better align the efforts of national governments, while in parallel, the International Olympic Committee was harmonizing efforts within the sports movement itself. I think that both of these paths helped pave the way for the establishment of WADA 10 years later. We also have our Convention on Match Fixing, which, as with the Anti-Doping Convention, has led states to update their laws and has helped empower law enforcement to tackle these crimes, and has brought public authorities more squarely into the picture. And we have recently launched a new convention also to clamp down on spectator violence, so that the vast majority of respectful fans can enjoy watching their teams, which also helps to restore public trust and confidence in sport. Of course, whenever coming up with new laws to govern behavior in sport, we have to get the balance right, so to say. I know there is a fear among some that the heavy hand of state interference will kill autonomy of sport. Nobody should really want this. But we have to recognize that unaddressed criminality is equally threatening to the autonomy of sport, because it really chips away at the public trust on which that autonomy rests. And in many cases, these crimes cannot be detected or tackled without law enforcement tools such as telephone tapping and electronic surveillance, or monitoring of risk-related accounts. In anti-doping, the majority of the high-profile cases, such as the Balco case, the Operación Puerto, the Armstrong case, there are several others, were revealed by police investigations in collaboration, I would mention, with independent national anti-doping organizations. To address the issue of match fixing, we rely even more on the intelligence and evidence, and information which is almost impossible to gather outside a criminal investigation. It is therefore crucial that the wrongdoing, such as corruption and trafficking in doping substances, although taking place within the framework of sport, are covered by clear legal provisions. And this is where the Council of Europe comes in. The present investigations on corruption within FIFA, on doping manipulations in the International Association of Athletics Federations, and on illegal sale of Olympic game tickets, are further evidence that public authorities have a vital role to play in upholding the rule of law, even when the offenses are happening within the domain of sport. The second point and lesson I want to share with you today is that we need a culture, so to say, of good governance at every level, including among national governments. The focus on international sporting scandals has, as a matter of fact, and I fear, diverted the attention of national governments so they haven't been able to focus enough on getting their own houses in order. A growing number of governments are paying great attention these days to the problems in other countries and the international sports movement. But more should be done to address issues relating to their own teams, their own sport leaders and associations. Within the Council of Europe, we are challenging our 47 member states in this way. And our message is clear. Governments must play an exemplary role when it comes to ethics in sport. Those who are complacent toward doping, corruption, and match fixing should know that such wrongdoings will, in the end, certainly backfire and will severely tarnish their reputation. And when public money is being spent, it must be done so transparently and with real mechanisms for democratic oversight and accountability. The third point I want to share with you is the need for a clear focus on the separation of power in sports governance. The international sports organizations, especially sport governing bodies, play a regulatory function, such as defining the laws of the game and the governance of their organization. They fulfill an executive function in the daily conduct of affairs. Last but not least, they also play a quasi-judicial function by sanctioning with disciplinary measures those not abiding by the code of ethics and internal regulations. Those functions must be organized with clear checks and balances. This is a key message. Where power is concentrated in the hands of a small group of leaders with very little oversight from the wider sporting community or society at large, problems are likely to occur. So what sort of proper checks and balances? First of all, transparency. It's been mentioned here today by the other speakers. Accountability of elected officials towards those who elect them. Independent ethical bodies and ethics and integrity codes, which are enforceable among their members and officials. Robust auditing procedures monitoring the functioning of the organizations according to clear rules. And, of course, clear rules to prevent conflict of interest. We see a growing consensus around these principles, but their implementation is key. It's not enough to have good laws, you also need to make sure they are implemented. This challenge is one we are very familiar with at the Council of Europe, and it is not dissimilar to that of establishing a clear separation of power within our member states, the fundamental principles of separation of power between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branches. So to sum up, the Council of Europe perspective on improving trust in sport hinges on 3 lessons from our work with member states. First of all, we need the right laws, which allows us to prevent crime effectively, while still recognizing and respecting the autonomy of sport. Secondly, we need a culture of good governance at every level, including national governments. And thirdly, we need a greater separation of power in the international sports organizations itself. This is our perspective, shaped by our work in public governance over many, many years. But of course, we don't claim at all to have any monopoly on wisdom here. And it's really fantastic to see so many representatives from the business community here today, who can really add a great deal to this debate from their experience in corporate governance. Thank you very much.